Hi, I'm Ellen, and this is the story of how my own family turned me into the villain, until I showed them what it looks like when the villain keeps receipts. I drove 3 hours through fog with a homemade pie and left without a word, a plate, or a place in their lives. The betrayal didn't come all at once. It came in silence, in glances, in signatures that weren't mine. Before we go any further, tell me, have you ever been blamed for something you didn't do, just because it was easier than facing the truth? If yes, comment number 1. If no, comment number 0. This is a family story you won't forget. I was still holding the pie when my father told me not to come home again. It was warm, pumpkin, her favorite. The table was already set, linen runner down the middle, crystal bowl for stuffing, folded napkins the color of fall leaves. Mom's best china plates, the ones with tiny blue roses around the edges, waited silently for grace to be said. But no one had said grace. No one had even passed the mashed potatoes. I stood just inside the kitchen, steam clinging to my coat, my arms wrapped around the pie I'd made the night before. It was my mother's recipe, down to the strange touch of maple syrup she swore by. The scent should have meant comfort. Instead, the room felt brittle, like glass under pressure. "Give back the 50,000, Ellen," my father said, "or don't bother coming home again." At first, I thought he was joking. My dad didn't do jokes, but even so, this felt too sharp for the moment. I looked at him, expecting a smirk. There wasn't one. Just the line in his jaw that always deepened when he was done explaining himself. Across the table, Carly stared at her lap. Joel fixed his eyes on the tablecloth like it had answers. Mom, sweet, gentle Mom, wouldn't meet my gaze. She had always defended me, or at least asked questions. Now she pressed a napkin to her mouth like she might be sick. "I'm sorry?" I asked, my voice catching on the last syllable. Dad didn't repeat himself. He just stood there, hands on his hips, waiting. I felt a strange weight in my arms, the pie tray growing heavier with each second. I looked down at it, as if it might explain what was happening. "You think I took it?" I said quietly. "From Mom?" No one responded, not even Joel, who once tackled a bully in 8th grade for calling me names. Carly's fingers twisted the corner of her sweater. Mom blinks too fast. I placed the pie carefully on the counter. The dish made a soft clink against the granite. I slipped my coat from the back of the chair, my hands moving slow, like underwater. "You have until the end of the week," Dad said, quieter now. "Then we go to the lawyer." I didn't speak, didn't cry, didn't scream like in those television movies where the heroine storms out, righteous and loud. I just turned, pieless, heart heavy, and walked toward the door. I left the pie on the counter and walked into the cold. No one followed me. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just drove, coat half buttoned, heart fully broken. The streets of Maple Glen were mostly empty, just a few porch lights glowing beneath wreaths of autumn leaves. Paper turkeys taped to windows fluttered in the breeze. I passed the diner with its neon open sign and thought of turning in, asking for coffee, pretending the night hadn't happened. But I kept going, past houses that used to wave me in, straight toward a roadside motel I'd only ever seen in passing. The man at the desk didn't ask questions. That was the first kindness of the night. The room smelled like old carpet and microwave popcorn. I dropped my keys onto the dresser, kicked off my boots, and sat at the edge of the bed. My hands were still trembling, not from cold, but from something deeper. Something cracked open. My mother had trusted me. At least, I thought she had. Weeks ago, I'd sat with her at that kitchen table, teaching her how to log in. how to choose security questions. I even wrote everything down for her, carefully, legibly, in that floral notepad she kept in the junk drawer. I thought I was helping. I pulled my laptop from my bag and opened it on the tiny desk, the screen's glow cutting through the gloom. I'd done this hundreds of times before, traced money, unraveled suspicious transactions, spotted patterns others missed, but it had never been personal. This time it was. I sent a message to Theo, concise, professional. Need transaction history for Greenwell Mutual, Mom's account, October 1st to November 15th. You know why. Then I sat back and stared at the ceiling. The buzzing heater kicked on, rattling the window pane. In that silence, my phone lit up with a text. Mr. Harrison. Happy Thanksgiving, kiddo. Hope you brought that pie again. Tears threatened for the first time. Not from the accusation. Not from the silence at that table. But because someone had remembered me. Perhaps sometimes it is the family that makes us saddest, not the outside world. The place that seems cozy becomes the place that makes us feel sad because of suspicion. If you sympathize with me, please leave a comment number 9 in the comment section below. Now, let's get to the next development of this story. I swiped the message away, heart thudding. The laptop dinged. Theo was fast. 3 withdrawals. Not online, all in person. My breath caught. I read the details again. $20,000 on October 10th. $15,000 on the 15th. Another $15,000 on the 20th. Each one done at the branch. Each one signed. They said I used the online login. They said no one else had access. They were wrong. They said it was digital. The bank says it wasn't. So who exactly walked in with my mother's ID? The girl in the hoodie pulled down her mask to speak. And there she was, Carly. Her voice was quiet, nearly swallowed by the low whir of the grainy bank security footage. She fidgeted as she handed something to the teller. A license. My mother's license. The timestamp read October 10th, 1:13 p.m. Carly's ponytail twitched with every anxious turn of her head. She glanced behind her once, twice. Then she leaned forward, lowered her mask, and said something I couldn't hear. But I didn't need sound. I knew that face. She tapped the counter with her fingers. Left, right, just like she used to do during tests in high school. I watched as she scribbled her name. The movement hadn't changed. I could almost see the loop of her Y. I paused the video and leaned back in the motel chair, letting the full weight of what I'd seen settle in my chest. Then I opened the second clip. October 15th. Joel this time. No mask, no hesitation. He walked up like he owned the place, smiled at the teller, signed the form with an easy hand. His sweater looked expensive, navy, with a tiny stitched logo I couldn't quite make out. The third video, October 20th, was Carly again. Same hoodie, different sunglasses. This time, she barely glanced around. She looked comfortable. They hadn't panicked. They'd planned it. Theo had also sent me metadata logs. The first login to the online account after I helped Mom wasn't from her phone. It came from a tablet connected to the house's Wi-Fi. The recovery email was new. The phone number linked to it? Joel's. My stomach turned. They had waited until I helped Mom go digital, then used it to cover their trail. Then they pointed to me. I opened a fresh document and began to drop in everything. Timestamps, screenshots, signature comparisons, metadata, login IPs. The kind of packet I'd normally submit to a court. Only this time, the defendants shared my last name. My phone buzzed again. Mr. Harrison? Got a weird text saying I owe taxes. Fake, right? I called him. Walked him through what to do. He chuckled. called me his financial guardian angel. I almost laughed. When the call ended, I looked back at the folder on my screen. My family's betrayal in bullet points and still frames. I zipped the file, closed the laptop, and pulled out the black folder I always used for boardroom presentations. It felt heavier than usual. Maybe it was. They accused me like I was the villain. Time to show them what it looks like when the villain keeps receipts. I didn't knock. I just walked in, like I still had the right to. The kitchen hadn't changed. Same yellow walls, same chipped tile behind the sink. It even smelled the same, chicken broth and rosemary, like comfort on a cold day. But it didn't feel like home, not anymore. Their voices hushed the moment the door creaked open. I didn't look at them. Just stepped inside and walked past the dining table where the linen runner still stretched across, untouched from last week. The folder was in my hands. Smooth black leather. I laid it gently on the kitchen island. Same spot we used to roll out cookie dough as kids. My fingers rested on the edge, then opened it with quiet purpose. Walter stood at the stove, still holding a wooden spoon like he'd frozen mid-stir. Barbara hovered at the sink, her hands wrapped in a dish towel. Carly was perched on the counter, legs swinging like she was 13 again, coffee mug in hand. Joel leaned against the fridge, arms crossed, pretending not to be watching. "You believed I stole from Mom," I said softly. "Let me show you what really happened." I slid out the first photo. A grainy still of Carly, hoodie and sunglasses, lowering her mask as she handed over Mom's license. The timestamp glowed in the corner. October 10th. Carly's legs stopped swinging. The second photo was Joel. Same branch, October 15th, grinning in a navy sweater, handing a check to the teller. He didn't flinch now, just stared at the floor. "These aren't strangers," I said. "They're the people I grew up with." I placed the teller slips next. Printed signatures matched to old notes still stuck on our family fridge. I didn't need handwriting analysis. I'd seen those loops since grade school. Carly's voice broke the silence. "You went through our stuff?" I tilted my head slightly. "You went through Mom's." Barbara reached for the documents, eyes scanning the pages. Her hands trembled. "But the bank! They said it was online," she whispered. "They thought that," I replied. "But the withdrawals weren't. The online access came later, from the tablet at home. The recovery phone number was Joel's. The silence that followed felt thick, like snowfall before it hits the ground. Dad turned off the burner. Joel looked up, then down again. Barbara sat at the table, hands open in her lap. She didn't speak. Carly's voice was bitter. "You always get everything, the job, the respect. I just wanted to level the field." "You didn't level anything," I said, meeting her eyes. "You burned it." Walter finally cleared his throat. "Ellen, what are you going to do?" I met his gaze, steady for the first time. "I'm not pressing charges, but I've sent the file to the family attorney. You can decide what to do with it." They accused me like I was the villain. Time to show them what it looks like when the villain keeps receipts. They thought I came to destroy the family. I came to finish my part in it. No one moved. The folder lay open on the kitchen island, a quiet wound on polished wood. I stood still, watching each of their faces shift. Anger, shame, and something like confusion. "I didn't come here to fight," I said. "I came to end the conversation you all started." Joel said nothing. Carly stared at her coffee like it had answers. Dad leaned back against the counter, suddenly looking older. The lines around his mouth, once stern, now just looked tired. "I'm not suing," I said again. "But this," I tapped the folder gently, "has been sent to the family attorney." Mom was silent. Her fingers rested in her lap, palms up, like she didn't know what to hold anymore. I turned to leave. There was no apology, no sudden rush of regret. Just the clink of the spoon in the sink, the faint hum of the refrigerator. Barbara's voice was small. "Ellen, please." I paused at the door, coat half on, heart still aching, but I didn't look back. "Thanksgiving is over," I said. "You made sure of that." No one stopped me as I stepped into the hallway. I reached the front door, hand on the knob. Outside, the first snow had started to fall. Light, quiet, persistent. It dusted the porch rail like powdered sugar, softening the sharp edges. I walked down the steps slowly, boots pressing into the thin layer of white. The cold didn't bite the way I expected. It just settled. I got into my car, folder beside me, keys in hand. I looked one last time at the house I'd grown up in, waiting for someone, anyone, to open the door. No one came after me, and that silence told me more than any apology ever could. The first time someone called me Professor Ellen, I nearly laughed. But they meant it. The woman had meant it too, clutching her notebook like a lifeline as she took a seat in the front row of the community center's meeting room. The folding chairs creaked under winter coats. Fluorescent lights buzzed above us. I stood at the front, dry erase marker in hand, facing a group of 6 retirees and one man who kept dozing off between sips of peppermint tea. It was my first class, Fraud Awareness for Seniors, sponsored by the local bank, taught by someone who knew, far too well, how betrayal could wear familiar faces. Mr. Harrison sat near the window, cardigan sleeves pushed up, pen ready. He was the one who nudged the bank into creating this series. After that scam text, he'd called, emailed, even visited the branch. He told them Maple Glen needed this, and that I was the person to teach it. I hadn't expected to feel anything when I walked in this morning, but as I spoke about phishing scams and too-good-to-be-true investments, a strange calm settled in. These people listened. They asked questions. They smiled. Near the end of class, a woman with hair like spun silver raised her hand. "My cousin lost her savings last year," she said softly. "I wish someone like you had been there for her." I nodded, unsure what to say, because once someone like me had been there, for my own mother, and it still hadn't been enough. When the session ended, they clapped. I gathered my papers slowly, already thinking about next week's topic. Mr. Harrison waited until the others shuffled out, then approached. "I wish I had a daughter like you," he said. My breath caught, just a little. I smiled. Small, but real. "Thanks," I murmured. I drove home as the sun set, casting long gold streaks across the snow. At the mailbox, I found a letter in familiar handwriting. No return address, just my name. I didn't open it. Inside, I placed it in the drawer beneath the bookshelf, alongside the folder I hadn't touched since Thanksgiving. I didn't need to read what it said. I already knew the story. I already knew the ending. I don't need to open the letter. I already know who I am. And it's enough. Some wounds don't shout. They hum softly in the background, until one day you choose to stop carrying them. In that quiet Vermont winter, I learned that closure doesn't always arrive with forgiveness. Sometimes it's simply deciding who you are, without needing them to agree. Kindness, when offered without demand, has a way of circling back, often from unexpected places, like a stranger's thank you or a handwritten note you never open. Like snow that covers what's broken but not forgotten, gentle dignity has a way of healing more than justice ever could. If this story brought someone to mind, consider reaching out. Not for resolution, just to remind them that kindness doesn't expire.